Hello, everyone. So, today we're gonna be doing some Edgar Allan Poe readings. Oh my gosh. Sorry, my voice is a bit shot. Hello, Mr. Butt. It's so nice to see you. Alright, so I do have an actual physical book of some selected works of Edgar Allan Poe today. So we'll be reading a couple selections. I do have one in particular which I think is a typical favorite amongst the Edgar Allan Poe enthusiasts. Yeah, no, it's awesome. Good to have you. I think I know where I'll be starting. So I'll start off with a few poems first, and then we'll move on to one of the longer, longer pieces of his. So, the first one that we'll be reading. Oh, I don't think I changed the stream title. One moment, please. One moment. I still think it's, yeah, it's still in the art stream. It's on keyboard. We're not drawing viewers, that was yesterday. Okay. That'll do. Okay. Alright. Okay. Alright. So, get to the page again. Alright. So, the first poem that we'll be reading today is called A Dream Within a Dream. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow. You are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away, in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? Nice and short and simple. Next one we'll read a bit longer of a poem, but I think it's, you talk about Edgar Allan Poe and you can't not think about the Raven. Oh, thank you. Am I pronouncing that correctly? But thank you. Alright, awesome. Good. So, next we'll read The Raven. And then from there we'll decide which of his short stories to read. There is The Fall of the House of Usher, which is a bit longer. There is The Descent into the Maelstrom, The Mask of the Red Death. All very good stories. Telltale Heart is also another one that I'm a big fan of. Can you imagine as a middle schooler that you're reading Edgar Allan Poe and not completely understanding what the context of the works are. Because that's how I was introduced to Mr. Allan Poe. Alright, so I'll read The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." I haven't read that one. I think I do have it in this collection. Let me check. Yep, I do have it in this collection. It's quite a nice little book, because it has like a leather cover on the front. It's like a cover is made of entirely leather, but it is carved the front in the image of Mr. Edgar Allan Poe with some words of his pieces. Back to reading. Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember was wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here, forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently, my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly, your forgiveness I implore. The fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token. And the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, and I heard again a tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not an instant stopped or stayed he, but when the mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Thou thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is the night's Plutonian shore," quoth the raven. "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door. bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at this stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is only its stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, the song one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er. But whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then, methought, the air grew denser, fumed from an unseen censer, swung by angels whose faint footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretched, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, and the pence from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind of pence, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest toss thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in the Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil. Oh my goodness. By that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, filled this soul with sorrow laden, if, within the distant Aidenn, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's plutonium shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Yeah, it does get a bit like, I'm getting lost a bit. Have to be honest. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seemings of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadows on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that flies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. And that is the raven. It is a bit of a, yes, I agree, it is a bit of a tongue twister. Tripping over some of the words, I will admit, not my finest. I'm gonna read one more poem and then we'll go on to the longer works. So, easy to think when you realize how frustrating. Yeah, so it's like a descent into madness, which I think is a common theme amongst his works. Just exploring, I guess, that side of the human psyche. It's interesting because, you know, how creatives end up hitting that specific mark. Go on to reading Dreamland, and then we'll go on to like a short story of his. Something that we haven't read before. Mask of the Red Death's a good one, but I have read the Pendulum. Funnily enough, I don't think I've actually read The Black Cat, so maybe we'll read that. Dreamland. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where the Eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright. I have reached these lands but newly from an ultimate dim thule, from a wild weird climb that leads sublime out of space, out of time. Bottomless vales and boundless floods, and chasms and caves and Titian woods, with forms that no man can discover, for the dews that drip all over. Mountains toppling evermore, the seas without a shore, these that restlessly aspire, surging unto skies of fire. Lakes that endlessly outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their still waters, still and chilly, with the snows of the lolling lily. By the lakes that thus outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, sad waters, sad and chilly, with the snows of the lolling lily, by the mountains, near the rivers, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever. By the grey woods, by the swamp, where the toad and newt encamp. I'm sure it's encamp. Goodness. By the dismal tarns and pools, where dwell the ghoul. By each spot the most unholy, in each nook most melancholy, where the traveller meets aghast, faded memories of the past, clouded forms that start and sigh, as they pass the wanderer by, white-robed forms of friends long given in agony to the earth and heaven. For the heart whose woes are legion, it's a peaceful, soothing region, for the spirit that walks in shadow, 'tis, oh 'tis an Eldorado. But the traveller, traveling through it, dare not openly view it. Never its mysteries are exposed to the weak human eye unclosed. Who wills its king, who hath forbid the uplifting of the fringed lid? And thus the sad soul that here passes, behold it but through darkened glasses, by a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an Eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright. I have wandered home but newly from this ultimate dim thule. And that is Dreamland. I think having the repetitions and then having it into a sense of echo really gives it that whimsical sense. Oh, 0 vibes. Thank you for the follow. I didn't hear the. Oh, right. I think I have the alliteration does that a lot. Yeah. I think. Yeah, no, I turned off the alert sounds to keep the vibes like low key, and I don't want it to be like an alarm in like the middle of the night. You just wake up in a start. But thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate it. Let's see. Let's the black cat. If I had a stronger microphone, it would be good to hear, like, I don't know if you guys can hear it, the sounds of the pages turning, but ooh, that was loud. Okay. Well, we'll see how it goes. Alright, so, the black cat. The most wild yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet mad I am not, and very surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburden my soul. Burthen my soul. Yeah. My immediate purpose is to place before the world plainly, succinctly, and without comment a series of mere household events. In their consequences, these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me. Yet I will not attempt to expound them. To me, they present a little but horror. To many, they will seem less terrible than Barocos. I'm realizing as I'm reading that I don't know how to pronounce a good chunk of these words as a Native American speaker, English speaker. Goodness, not a Native American. Oh, goodness. The American in me slipped out. Hereafter, perhaps, some intellect may be found which will reduce my phantasm to a commonplace. Some intellect more calm, more logical, and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive in the circumstances I detail it with awe nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. From my infancy, I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. I was especially fond of animals, and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time, and never was so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This peculiarity of character grew with my growth, and in my manhood I derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection for a faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly be at the trouble of explaining the nature of, or the intensity of the gratification thus derivable. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute, which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early. I was happy to find in my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black and sagacious to an astonishing degree. And speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusions to the ancient popular notion which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point. I mention the matter at all for no better reason than that it happens, just now, to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me whenever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew, day by day, more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length, I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected, but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still retained sufficient regard to restrain myself from maltreating him. I had no scruple of maltreating the rabbits, monkey, or even the dog, when by accident or through affection they came in my way. My disease grew upon me, for what this disease is like alcohol, and at length even Pluto, who was now becoming old, and consequently somewhat peevish, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. One night, returning home, more intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him, when, in his fright at my violence, he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed, at once, to take its flight from my body, and a more than fiendish malevolence, gin-nurtured, thrilled by every fibre of my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its own eyes from its socket. I blush, I burn, I shudder while I pen the damnable atrocity. I feel that hearing is quite satisfying. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it adds like an extra sense of effect to it. Fortunately, my mic isn't hearing pages make it better. Yeah, I agree. I think if I talk while I'm flipping the pages, maybe you guys can hear that. I'm not sure. I think I have to keep like constantly having the microphone on. But yeah. When the reason returned with the morning, when I had slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse for the crime of which I had been guilty. But it was, at best, a feeble and equivocal feeling. Equivocal? Yeah, equivocal. Thank goodness, I'm just learning more and more vocabulary that I should be able to read. Yeah. Experience a sentiment, like a feeble and equivocal feeling, and the soul remained untouched. Again plunged into excess, and soon drowned in wine all memory of the deed. In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of the lost eye presented, it is true, a frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He went about the house as usual, but, as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of a creature which had once so loved me. But this feeling soon gave place to irritation, and then came, as if to my final and irrevocable overthrow, spirit of perverseness. Of this spirit philosophy takes no account. Yet I am not more sure that my soul lives than I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary faculties or sentiments which give direction to the character of man. Who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile or a silly action for no other reason than because he knows he should not? Have we not a perpetual inclination in the teeth of our best judgment to violate that which is law, merely because we understand it to be such? The spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing of the soul to vex itself, to offer violence to its own nature, to do wrong for wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue and finally consummate the injury I'd inflicted upon the unoffending brute. One morning, in cold blood, I slipped a noose about its neck and hung it to the limb of a tree, hung it with the tears streaming from my eyes and with the bitterest remorse at my heart, hung it because I knew it had loved me, and because I felt it had given me no reason of offense, hung it because I knew that in doing I was committing a sin, a deadly sin that would jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it. Goodness. if such a place were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. On the night of the day on which the cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the conflagration. Oh, goodness. Conflagration. Goodness, what a word. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I resigned myself thenceforth to despair. I am above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between the disaster and the atrocity, but I am detailing a chain of facts and wish not to leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. This exception was found in a compartment wall not very thick, which stood about the middle of the house, and against which had rested the head of my bed. The plastering there, in great measure, resisted the action of the fire, a fact which I attribute to its having been recently spread. About this wall a dense crowd had collected, and many persons seemed to be examining a particular portion of it with very minute and eager attention. The words "strange," "singular," and other similar expressions excited my curiosity. I approached and saw, as if graven in bas relief upon the white surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was given with the accuracy truly marvelous. There was a rope about the animal's neck. When I first beheld this apparition, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and terror were extreme. But at length reflection came to my aid. The cat, I remembered, had been hung in a garden adjacent to the house. On the alarm of the fire, this garden had been immediately filled by the crowd, by some one of whom the animal must have been cut from the tree and thrown, through an open window, into my chamber. This had probably been done with the view of arousing me from sleep. Falling of other walls had compressed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the lime of which, with the flames and the ammonia from the carcass, had then accomplished the portraiture as I saw it. Although I thus readily accounted for to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not the less fail to make a deep impression upon my fancy. For months I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat, and during this period there came into my spirit a half-sentiment that seemed, but was not, remorse. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and to look about me, among the vile haunts which I now habitually frequented, for another pet of the same species, and of somewhat similar appearance, with which this supplied its place. One night, as I sat, half stupefied, in a den of more than infamy, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object reposing upon the head of one of the immense hogshead of gin, or of rum, constituted the chief furniture of the apartment. I had been looking steadily at the top of this hogshead for some minutes, and what now caused me surprise was the fact that I had not sooner perceived the object thereupon. I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, a very large one, fully as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every aspect but one. Pluto had not a white hair upon any portion of his body, but this cat had a large, although indefinite splotch of white, nearly covering the whole region of the breast. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose, purred loudly, rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my notice. This, then, was the very creature of which I was in search. I at once offered to purchase it of the landlord, but this person made no claim to it, knew nothing of it, had never seen it before. I continued my caress, and when I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition to accompany me. I permitted it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I proceeded. When it reached the house, it domesticated itself at once and became immediately a great favorite with my wife. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. It was just the reverse of what I had anticipated, but I know not how or why it was. Its evident fondness for myself rather disgusted and annoyed. By slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame. Ah, goodness. A certain sense of shame, and the remembrance of my former deed, cruelty, preventing me from physically abusing it. I did not for some weeks strike or otherwise violently ill-use it, but gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unutterable loathing, and to flee silently from its odious presence, as from the breath of a pestilence. Yeah, there we go. So adding some page ASMR too. What added, no doubt, to my hatred of the beast was the discovery on the morning after I brought it home that, like Pluto, it also had been deprived of one of its eyes. The circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, who, as I already said, possessed in a high degree that humanity of feeling which had once been my distinguishing trait, the source of many of my simplest and purest pleasure. Pages. Former pages up. With my aversion to this cat, however, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with a pertinacity. Oh my gosh. which it would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair, or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome caresses. If I rose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down, or fastening its long and sharp claws into my dress, chamber, in this manner, to my breast. At such times, although I longed to destroy it with a blow, I was yet withheld from doing so, partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, let me confess it at once, by absolute dread of the beast. This dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil, and yet I should be at a loss how otherwise to define it. I am almost ashamed to own, yes, even in this felon's cell, I am almost ashamed to own that the terror and horror with which the animal inspired me, and heightened by one of the merest chimeras it would be possible to conceive. Oh my gosh. My eyes are failing me. My wife had called my attention more than once to the character of the mark of white hair, of which I had spoken, and which constituted the sole visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that this mark, although large, had been originally very indefinite, but, by slow degrees nearly imperceptible, and for which a long time my reason struggled to reject as fanciful, it had at length assumed a rigorous distinctness of outline. It was now the representation of an object I shuddered to name, and for this, above all, I loathed and dreaded, and would have rid myself of the monster had I dared. It was now, I say, the image of a ghastly thing, of the gallows. O mournful and terrible engine of horror and of crime, of agony and of death. And now I was indeed wretched beyond the wretchedness of mere humanity, and a brute beast whose fellow I had contemptuously destroyed. A brute beast to work out for me a man fashioned in the image of the high God, so much of insufferable woe. Alas, neither by day nor by night knew I the blessing of rest any more. During the former, the creature left me no moment alone, and in the latter I started hourly of dreams of the unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face, and its vast weight, an incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent eternally upon my heart. Beneath the pressure of torments such as these, the feeble remnant of the good within me succumbed. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates, the darkest and most evil thoughts. The moodiness of my usual temper increased a hatred of all things and of all mankind, while from the sudden, frequent, and ungovernable outbursts of a fury to which I now blindly abandoned myself. My uncomplaining wife, alas, was the most usual and most patient of sufferers. One day she accompanied me, upon some household errand, into the cellar of the old building which our poverty compelled us to inhabit. The cat followed me down the steep stairs, and nearly throwing me headlong, exasperated me to madness. Uplifting an axe, and forgetting in my wrath the childish dread which had hitherto stayed my hand, I aimed a blow at the animal, which, of course, would have proved instantly fatal had it descended as I wished. But this blow was arrested by the hand of my wife, goaded by the interference into a rage more than demoniacal. I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without a groan. This hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith, and with entire deliberation, to the task of concealing the body. I knew that I could not remove it from the house, either by day or by night, without the risk of being observed by the neighbors. Many projects entered my mind. At one period, I thought of cutting the corpse into minute fragments and destroying them by fire. At another, I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the cellar. Again, I deliberated about casting it in the well in the yard, about packing it in a box as if merchandised, with the usual arrangements, and so getting a porter to take it from the house. Finally, I hit upon what I considered a far better experiment than either of these. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are recorded to have walled up their victims. For the purpose such as this, the cellar was well adapted. Its walls were loosely constructed and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster, which the dampness of the atmosphere had prevented from hardening. Moreover, in one of the walls has a projection caused by a false chimney or fireplace that had been filled up and made to resemble the red of the cellar. I made no doubt that I could readily displace the bricks at this point, insert the corpse, and wall the whole up as before, so that no eye can detect anything suspicious. I'm gonna take a drink of water real quick. Oh, I did have a cup of tea, but it has since cooled significantly. And in this calculation, I was not deceived. By means of a crowbar, I easily dislodged the bricks, and have carefully deposited the body against the inner wall. I propped it in that position, while with little trouble I relaid the whole structure as it originally stood. Having procured mortar, sand, and hair with every possible precaution, I prepared a plaster which could not be distinguished from the old, and with this I very carefully went over the new brickwork. When I had finished, I felt satisfied that all was right. The wall did not present the slightest appearance of having been disturbed. The rubbish on the floor was picked up by the minutest care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, "Here at least, then, my labor has not been in vain." The next step was to look for the beast which had been the cause of so much wretchedness, for I had, at length, firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at the moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate. It appeared that the crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger, and forbore to present itself in my present mood. It is impossible to describe, or to imagine, the blissful sense of relief which the absence of the detested creature occasioned in my bosom. It did not make its appearance during the night, and thus for one night at least, since its introduction into the house, I soundly and tranquilly slept. Even with the burden of murder upon my soul. The second and third day passed. Still my tormentor came not. Once again I breathed as a free man. The monster in terror had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me but little. Some few inquiries had been made, but these had been readily answered. Even a search had been instituted, but of course nothing was to be discovered. I looked upon my future felicity as secured. Upon the 4th day of the assassination, a party of police came very unexpectedly into the house and proceeded again to make rigorous investigation of the premises. Secure, however, in the inscrutability of my place of concealment, I felt no embarrassment, whatever. The officers bade me to accompany them in their search. They left no nook or corner unexplored. At length, for the 3rd or 4th time, they descended into the cellar, quivered not in muscle. My heart beat calmly as that of one who slumbers in innocence. I walked the cellar from end to end, folded my arms upon my bosom, and roamed easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to depart. The glee at my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say, if but one word, by way of triumph, and to render doubly sure their assurance of my guiltlessness. "Gentlemen," I said at last, as the party ascended the steps, "I delight to have allayed your suspicions. I wish you all health and a little more courtesy. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well-constructed house." In the rapid desire to say something easily, I scarcely knew what I uttered at all. "I may say an excellently well-constructed house. These walls are you going, gentlemen? These walls are solidly put together," and here, through the mere frenzy of bravado, I rapped heavily, the cane which I held in my hand, upon that very portion of the brickwork behind which stood the corpse of the wife with my bosom. My goodness. Brickwork behind which stood the corpse of the wife of my bosom. There we go. But may God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the archfiend. No sooner had the reverberation of my blows sunk into silence than I was answered by a voice from within the tomb, by a cry at first muffled and broken, like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long and continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman, a howl, a shriek, a wailing shriek, half of horror and half of triumph, just as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly from the throats of the damned in their agony and of the demons that exult in the damnation. And of my own thoughts it is folly to speak. Swooning, I exaggerated the opposite wall. For one instant, the party upon the stairs remained motionless through extremities of terror and of awe, and the next a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall. It fell bodily. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, with its red extended mouth and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast whose craft had seduced me into murder, whose informing voice had consigned me to the hangman, had walled up the monster up within the tomb. Friends is the Black Cat. Reading it through, I do realize I have read that. I was like, wait, the guy murders his wife and then buries her in the wall. It's the cat that outs him. But yeah, that is the Black Cat. What a tale, a story. You, Kindred. I saw your response tweet. What was the thing about getting people? Yeah, no, he does. It's either about like dead wives or like killing the wife and then bodies in specific places. But I don't know, it's strange, I guess, when you're a specific craft, I guess. There's always going to be a theme that follows throughout. yeah, I think. Oh my goodness. Black cat, he's got his wife walled up, telltale heart hiding a bottom on the floor, casket on my tail, walling it up again. Yeah, no, there's certainly a running theme. At least two stories buried alive. For sure, for sure. Strange, but not really. But I'm glad that, at the very least, um, he has a renown, even if he might not have had it at the time. It's always a mystery as to how he died for someone who was so engrossed in writing about death and terror, such as that. Really knows of how he passed. There was always going to be theories and popular beliefs, but I think maybe in his soul, he just knew that he had written the stories he needed to tell and just left him. Fitting end for an author of that caliber. I think I'll go back to poems for now, because I think I think my throat's starting to give out on me, which isn't that good. But I'll do some like page turning. I'll do some soft talking, so at least the mic is going, but like so that at least the microphone can pick up like the sounds of the pages flipping. Some random rambling. There was a movie, I think called Poe, or it was an Edgar Allan Poe movie, to say. Called The Raven, released in 2012. It wasn't that good, but I guess it was a fun watch, even if it wasn't really perfect in a sense. You know, those types of movies where it's not particularly accurate to the source material, but it's a fun movie just to turn your brain off and just enjoy. But the premise of The Raven 2012 was, let me read the little summary. In 19th century Baltimore, Detective Emmett Fields makes a horrifying discovery. The murders of a mother and daughter resemble a fictional crime described in a story by Edgar Allan Poe. When another murder occurs, also seemingly inspired by Poe's writings, Fields realizes a serial killer is on the loose and enlists Poe's help in catching the felon. The stakes become personal for the struggling author when someone close to him may become the killer's next victim. So, it's received a 22% on Rotten Tomato. Based on like the older ones with Vincent Price. You see the 1963 version of The Raven. I have to admit, I haven't been the biggest movie enthusiast, so my experience with older films, especially, I'm not that well versed in. Even modern films nowadays, I'm not that well versed in, because I find it a bit difficult to sit still for movies for extended periods of time, unless I really prepare for it. Unrelated to Poe, but there's a specific movie that I've been meaning to watch called Soylent Green, which is I don't know how to describe it. um, the Soylent Green is about. It's a 1973 film. It's a dystopian thriller film, as the Wikipedia will put it. Let me just read the little summary of it, and then we'll go back to some Edgar Allan Poe poetry. In a densely overpopulated, starving New York City of the future, NYPD Detective Robert Thorne investigates the murder of an executive of ration manufacturer Soylent Corporation. With the help of elderly academic Solomon Sol Roth, Thorne begins to make real progress till the governor mysteriously pulls the plug. Obsessed with the mystery, Thorne steps out from behind the badge and launches his own investigation into the murder. So, there is. I do wish to watch Soylent Green at some point, maybe sometime soon, hopefully. And they have a population control method, exactly. I like to think it's rather interesting how a film in the 70s had already explored the ideas of some of the realities we might be facing today. It's interesting. Back to poetry. I'm trying to figure out what is this long poem that I'm seeing right now. Oh, you are very long. Is this all really one poem? Goodness. Yep, it is one. I read some of this shorter. What bothers me is that there's a company that makes it liquid meal. Yes, yes. So yeah, so there's a product called Soylent, and its whole thing is meal replacement, and it it had to have been somewhat inspired because you don't just come up with a name like that without making some background checks to make sure that it's not infringing on any other intellectual property. So I'm sure that they knew what they were doing, which makes it all the more bothersome. Not exactly sure what angle they were going. Probably to create a buzz for maybe some of the people have seen. Alright. In amusing fashion, we will be reading a sonnet, The Science. Science, true daughter of old time thou art, who alterest all things with thy peering eyes. Why priest thou thus upon the poet's heart, vulture, whose wings are dull realities? How should he love thee, or how deem thee wise, who wouldst not leave him in his wandering to seek for treasure in the jeweled skies? Albeit he soared with an undaunted wing, hast thou not dragged Diana from her car, and driven the Hamadryad from the wood, to seek a shelter in some happier star? Hast thou not torn the Naiad from her flood, the elfin from the green grass, and from me the summer dream beneath the tamarind tree? Green bottles mint flavor. Yeah, no, that really leave an impact. Intrin, are you an avid movie watcher? As much as I used to be one of the. Oh, I see. Oh, that's fascinating. Because I guess older media always intrigued me to a sense. call it more of a fascination rather than a hobby. So the older films, like, I guess nowadays we're so focused on capturing like photorealism in media or certain angle of popularity that original concepts are more and more difficult to get around, especially I guess in the mainstream film nowadays with all the remakes and remaster and retellings. Of course, with each new wave of not speaking, but telling these stories, there's new angles you can manage, but I do think that having more original content or ideas that are explored have a little bit more sway to them. That's just me rambling. Let's see. Another. Yeah, no. It's the same. Yeah, there's the saying that all ideas aren't there are no original ideas. Which I guess in a sense is true. Because whatever you've thought of in the whole span of human history, I'm sure there's been a thought similar to that. I guess each director and each take that they have ends up having a new vision, their own lens in a sense. Nope. Alright, so City in the Sea. Lo, Death has reared himself as a oh my goodness, I can't. Lo, Death has reared himself a throne in a strange city lying alone, or down within the dim west, where the good and the bad and the worst and the best have gone to their eternal rest. Oh, sorry, wait. Answer just one. Yeah, no, I can see that. Especially if they grow up in the media. I guess it's in a sense like fan work is always going to be somewhat popular because as long as, there's an audience for it. And some people who make fan works end up getting to a situation where they can create their own. Okay. There's shrines and palaces and towers, time-eaten towers that tremble not, resemble nothing that is ours, around by lifting winds forgot, resignedly beneath the sky that melancholy waters lie. No rays from the holy heaven come down on the long night time of that town, but night from out the lurid sea streams up the turrets silently, gleams up the pinnacles far and free, up domes, up spires, kingly halls, up fanes, up Babylon-like walls, up shadowy long forgotten bowers, sculptured ivy and stone flowers, up many and many a marvelous shrine, whose wreaths friezes intertwine the viol, the violet, and the vine. Resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie, so blend the turret and shadows there, that all seem pendulous in air, while from the proud tower in the town, death looks gigantically down. There are open fanes and gaping graves, yawn level with the luminous wave, but not the riches there that lie in each idol's diamond eye. Not the gaily jeweled dead tempt the waters from their bed, or no ripples curl, alas, along that wilderness of glass. No swellings tell that winds may be upon some far-off happier sea, no heavings hint that winds have been on seas less hideously serene. But lo, a stir is in the air, the wave, there is movement there, as if the towers had thrown aside in slightly sinking the dull tide, as if their tops have feebly given a void within the filmy heaven. The waves have now a redder glow, the hours are breathing faint and low, and when amid no earthly moans, down, down that town shall settle hence. Hell, rising from 1,000 thrones, shall do it. And that is the city in the sea. A little short, but I still think it gets the message across. I don't want to dip into another short story so soon because my my throat has my chest. What ice cream? What flavor? What flavor? Is it the vanilla that we talked about? Yeah, vanilla. Very good. Very. I'm happy you have your ice cream. The Klondike. Oh, I'm a big fan of the mint Klondike. Actually, I realized recently that that's a flavor. It's good. I don't know. I'm such a big texture person nowadays, so having it not a good crunch into it really really. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Let's see some poems that book here. It'd make more sense to read all the poems in the book before moving on, but the spirits of the Alright. We'll read Spirits of the Dead. It's a good thing that all of these are public domain, so we have some nice, not comfy stories, but stories that can be told around the fireplace. It's a crackle. Ugh, let me just get some water in me first. Things speaking for an extended period of time in like a near whisper is getting my throat to be shot. But it's alright. I don't think I'll be. I think tomorrow I'm taking off. Okay. Spirits of the dead. Okay. Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone. not one of all crowd to pry in thine hour of secrecy. Be silent in that solitude, which is not loneliness, for then spirits of the dead who stood in life before thee are in death around thee, and their will shall then overshadow thee. Be still. For the night, though clear, shall frown, and the stars shall look not down from their high thrones in the heaven, with light like hope to mortals given, but their red orbs without beam to thy weariness should seem. As a burning and a fever would cling to thee forever. Now our thoughts thou shalt not banish, now our visions ne'er to vanish. From thy spirit shall they pass, no more like dewdrops from the grass. The breeze, the breath of God is still, and the mist upon the hill, shadowy yet unbroken, is a symbol and a token, how it hangs upon the trees of mystery, of mystery. Yeah. The spirits of the dead. Alright, let's see. Oh, okay. Let's read one from the book now. Alright. We have at morn, at noon, at twilight dim, Maria, thou hast heard my hymn. In joy and woe, in good and ill, Mother of God, be with me still. And the hours flew brightly by, and not a cloud obscured the sky. My soul, lest it should trunk be, thy grace did guide to thine and thee. Now in storms of fate o'ercast, darkly my present and my past. Let my future radiance shine with sweet hopes of thee and thine. Short and sweet, sweet. Then there's another one, Bridal Ballad. If I didn't have so many filters for the microphone, everything would be just a little easier to hear, but with a lot of background noise, I think it would be best just to keep those audio filters on. Alright, so let's read Bridal Ballad. The ring is on my hand, and the wreath is on my brow. Satins and jewels grand are all at my command, and I am happy. But my lord, he loves me well. But when first he breathed his vow, I felt my bosom swell. But the words rang as a knell, and the voice seemed his who fell in the battle down the dell, and who is happy now. What he spoke to reassure me, he kissed my pallid brow, while a reverie came o'er me, and the churchyard bore me, and I sighed to him before me, thinking him dead, allure me. Oh, I am happy now. Thus the words were spoken, in this the plighted vow, and though my faith be broken, and though my heart be broken, behold the golden token, proves me happy now. Would God I could awaken, for I dream I know not how, and my soul is sorely shaken, lest an evil step be taken, lest the dead who is forsaken may not be happy now. Another short but simple. I think also The Fall of Usher might literally take us an hour to read through. If we were to. Usher isn't that bad. Let me just see. Mm. It doesn't seem that bad, but it took me less than a bit of half hour when you did it. Oh, I see. Initially, before I settled on Edgar Allan Poe, I think I was going to do terms and conditions, ASMR readings of like various websites, like the Google one, maybe even the Twitch one. But I had this book lying around. I haven't touched it. I purchased it. So, all about in reading it. Let's see. Hmm. Book is definitely Unparalleled Adventure of One Hans Fall is quite long. Okay. Let's see. Diddling considered as one of the exact. Diddling considered as one of the exact sciences. Doesn't seem that. Alright. Alright. Alright, I think we'll read this last one and probably end the stream here. But we'll make it count. Never mind, I already see some words I can't pronounce. My goodness. Alright, no, we'll bite through it. I'll bite through it. Alright, diddling, considered as one of the exact sciences. Diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. The world began, there had been two Jeremys. One wrote the Jeremiad about usury and was called Jeremy Bentham. He had been much admired by Mr. John Neal and was a great man in a small way. The other gave name to the most important of the exact sciences and was a great man in a great way, I may say, indeed in the greatest of ways. Diddling, or the abstract idea conveyed by the verb to diddle, is sufficiently well understood. Yet the fact, the deed, the thing diddling is somewhat difficult to define. We may get, however, at a tolerably distinct conception of the matter in hand by defining not the thing diddling in itself, but man as an animal that diddles. Had Plato but hit upon this, he would have been spared the affront of the picked chicken. Indeed. I'm already enjoying it. It seems very lighthearted compared. Very pertinently, it was demanded of Plato why a picked chicken was clearly a biped without feathers, was not, according to his own definition, a man. But I am not to be bothered by any similar query. Man is an animal that diddles, and there is no animal that diddles but man. It will take an entire hen coop of picked chickens to get over that. What constitutes the essence, the nair, the principle of diddling is, in fact, peculiar to the class of creatures that wear coats and pantaloons. Crow thieves, a fox cheats, a weasel outwits, a man diddles. To diddle is his destiny. Man was made to mourn, says the poet, but not so. He was made to diddle. This is his aim, his object, his end. For this reason, when a man diddled, we say he's done. Diddling, rightly considered, is a compound of which the ingredients are minuteness, interest, perseverance, ingenuity, audacity, nonchalance, originality, impertinence, and grin. Minuteness. Your diddler is minute. His operations are upon a small scale. His business is retail, for cash or approved paper at sight. Should he ever be tempted into magnificent speculation, he then at once loses his distinctive features, becomes what we term financier. This latter word conveys the diddling idea in every respect except that of magnitude. A diddler may thus be regarded as a banker in petto, a financial operation as a diddle at Bravignac. Oh my goodness. This is gonna. Goodness. The one is to the other as Homer to Flaccus, as a mastodon to a mouse, as the tail of a comet to that of a pig. Interest. Your diddler is guided by self-interest. He scorns to diddle for the mere sake of the diddle, as an object in view, his pocket and yours. He regards always the main chance. Looks to number one. You are number two, and you must look to yourself. Perseverance. Your diddler perseveres. He is not readily discouraged. But even the banks break, he cares nothing about it. He steadily pursues his end, and ut canis acorio unquam absterbitur uncto. So he never lets go of his game. Ingenuity. Your diddler is ingenious. He has constructiveness at large. He understands plot. He invents and circumvents. Were he not Alexander, he would be Diogenes. Were he not a diddler, he would be a maker of patent rat traps, or an angler for trout. Audacity. Your diddler is audacious. He is a bold man. Carries the war into Africa, conquers all by assault. He would not fear the daggers of Fray Heron. With a little more prudence, Dick Turpin would have made a good diddler. With a trifle less blarney, Daniel O'Connell. With a pound or two more brains, Charles XII. Nonchalant. Your diddler is nonchalant. He is not at all nervous. He never had any nerves. Never seduced into a flurry. He's never put out, unless put out of doors. He is cool as a cucumber. He's calm as a smile from Lady Berrig. He is easy as an old love or the damsels of ancient Maillet. Originality. Your diddler is original, conscientiously so. His thoughts are his own. He would scorn to employ those of another. Stale trick is his aversion. He would return my purse, I am sure, upon discovering that he had obtained it by an unoriginal diddle. Never be scared of the dog's skin grease. Interesting. Thank you for the translation. Pertness. Your diddler is impertinent. He swaggers. He sets his arms akimbo. He thrusts his hands in his trousers pockets. He sneers in your face. He treads on your corns. He eats your dinner. He drinks your wine. He borrows your money. He pulls your nose. He kicks your poodle, and he kisses your wife. This just sounds like um the opposite, not the opposite, but like I guess a college student. Grin. True diddler winds up all with a grin, but this nobody sees but himself. He grins when his daily work is done, when his allotted labors are accomplished, at night in his own closet, and although altogether for his own private entertainment. He goes home, he locks his door, divests himself of his clothes, puts out his candle, puts into bed, he places his head upon the pillow. All is done, and your diddler grins. There is no hypothesis. It is a matter of course. Reason a priori, and a diddle would be no diddle without a grin. The origin of the diddle is referable to the infancy of the human race. Perhaps the first diddler was Adam. At all events, we can trace the science back to a very remote period of antiquity. The moderns, however, have brought it to the perfection never dreamed of by our thick-headed progenitors. Without pausing to speak of old saws, therefore, I shall content myself with a compendious account of some of the more modern instances. A very good diddle is this. A housekeeper in want of a sofa, for instance, is seen to go in and out of several cabinet warehouses. At length she arrives at one offering an excellent variety. She is accosted and invited to enter by a polite and voluble individual at the door. She finds a sofa well adapted to her views, and upon inquiring the price is surprised and delighted to hear a sum named at least 20%, lower than her expectations. She hastens to make the purchase, gets a bill and receipt, leaves her address with a request that the article be sent home as speedily as possible, and retires amid a profusion of bows from the shopkeeper. The night arrives and no sofa. The servant is sent to make inquiry about the delay. The whole transaction is denied. No sofa had been sold, no money received, except by the diddler who played shopkeeper for the nonce. Our cabinet warehouses are left entirely unattended and thus afford every facility for a trick of this kind. Visitors enter, look at furniture, and depart unheeded and unseen. Should any one wish to purchase or to inquire the price of an article, a bell is at hand, and this is considered amply sufficient. Again, quite a respectable diddle is this. A well-dressed individual enters a shop, makes a purchase to the value of $1, finds, much to his vexation, that he has left his pocketbook in another coat pocket, and so says to the shopkeeper. Would be hustlers now, exactly. My dear sir, never mind, just oblige me, will you, by sending the bundle home. But stay, I really believe that I have nothing less than a $5 bill even there. However, you can send $4 in change with the bundle, you know. Very good, sir, replies the shopkeeper, who entertains at once a lofty opinion of the high-mindedness of his customer. I know fellows, he says to himself, who would just have put the goods under their arms and walked off with a promise to call and pay the $1 as they came by noon. A boy is sent with the parcel and change. On the route, quite accidentally, he is met by the purchaser, who exclaims, "Ah, this is my bundle, I see. I thought you had been home with it long ago. Well, go on. My wife, Mrs. Trotter, will give you the $5. I left instructions with her to that effect. The change you might as well give to me. I shall want some silver for the post office. Very good. 1, 2, is this a good quarter? 3, 4, quite right. Say to Mrs. Trotter that you met me, and be sure now, and do not loiter on the way." The boy does not loiter at all. He is a very long time in getting back from his errand, for no lady of the precise name of Mrs. Trotter is to be discovered. He consoles himself, however, that he not been such a fool as to leave the goods without the money, and re-entering his shop with a self-satisfied air, feels sensibly hurt and indignant when his master asks him what has become of the change. A very simple diddle indeed is this. The captain of a ship which is about to sail is presented by an official-looking person with an unusually moderate bill of city charges, but to get off so easily and confused by 100 duties pressing upon him all at once, he discharges the claim forthwith. In about 15 minutes, another and less reasonable bill is handed him by one who soon makes it evident that the first collector was a diddler, and the original collection a diddle. Here, too, is a somewhat similar thing. A steamboat is casting loose from the wharf. A traveler, portmanteau in hand, is discovered running towards the wharf at full speed. Suddenly he makes a dead halt, stoops and picks up something from the ground in a very agitated manner. It is a pocketbook, and "Has any gentleman lost a pocketbook?" he cries. No one can say that he has exactly lost a pocketbook, but a great excitement ensues when the treasure trove is found to be of value. The boat, however, must not be detained. "Time and tide wait for no man," says the captain. "For God's sake, stay only a few minutes," says the finder of the book. "The true claimant will presently appear." "Can't wait," replies the man in authority. "Cast off there, d'ye hear?" "What am I to do?" asks the finder in great tribulation. "I am about to leave the country for some years, and I cannot conscientiously retain this large amount of my possession. I beg your pardon, sir," he addresses a gentleman on shore, "but you have an air of an honest man. Will you confer upon me the favor of taking charge of this pocketbook? I know I can trust you, and of advertising it. The notes, you see, amount to a very considerable sum. The owner will, no doubt, insist upon rewarding you for your trouble." "Me? No, you. It was you who found the book." "Well, if you must have it so, I will take a small reward just to satisfy your scruples. Let me see. Why, these notes are all hundreds. Bless my soul, 100 is too much to take. 50 would be quite enough, I am sure." "Cast off there," says the captain. "But then I have no change for 100, and upon the whole you had better cast off there," says the captain. "Never mind," cries the gentleman on shore, who has been exclaiming his own pocketbook for the last minute or so. "Never mind, I can fix it. Here's a 50 on the Bank of North America. Throw the book." And the over-conscientious finder takes the 50 with marked reluctance and throws the gentleman with the book as desired, while the steamboat fumes and fizzles on her way. In about half an hour after her departure, the large amount is seen to be a counterfeit presentment, and the whole thing a capital diddle. Oh god. See how many pages are. Okay. A bold diddle is this: a camp meeting, or something similar, is held at a certain spot which is accessible only by means of a free bridge. The diddler stations himself upon this bridge, respectfully informs all passers-by of the new county law, which establishes a toll of 1 cent for foot passenger, 2 for horses and donkeys, and so forth and so forth. Some grumble, but all submit, and the diddler goes home with a wealthier man by some $50 or $60 well earned. This taking a toll from a great crowd of people is an excessively troublesome thing. A neat diddle is this: friend holds one of the diddler's promises to pay, filled up and signed in due form, on the ordinary blanks printed in red ink. The diddler purchases 1 or 2 dozens of these blanks, and every day dips one of them in his soup, makes his dog jump for it, and finally gives it to him a bone bow. Now, arriving at maturity, the diddler, with the diddler's dog, calls upon the friend, and the promise to pay is made the topic of discussion. The friend produces it from his escritoire, and is in the act of reaching it to the diddler, when up jumps the diddler's dogs and devours it forthwith. The diddler is not only surprised but vexed and incensed at the absurd behavior of his dog, and expresses his entire readiness to cancel the obligation at any moment when the evidence of the obligation shall be forthcoming. A very minute diddle is this: a lady is insulted in the street by a diddler's accomplice. The diddler himself flies to her assistance, and giving his friend a comfortable thrashing, insists upon attending the lady to her own door. He bows with his hand upon his heart, and most respectfully bids her adieu. She entreats him, as her deliverer, to walk in and to be introduced to her big brother and her papa. With a sigh, he declines to do so. "Is there no way, then, good sir," she murmurs, "in which I may be permitted to testify my gratitude?" "Why, yes, madam, there is. It would be kind enough to lend me a couple of shillings." Oh, goodness me. You taught your sister's dog to eat homework. What a good strategy you have. In the first excitement of the moment, the lady decides upon fainting outright. Upon second thought, however, she opens her purse strings and delivers the specie. Now this, I say, is a diddle minute, for 1 entire moiety of the sum borrowed has to be paid to the gentleman who had the trouble of performing the insult, and who had then to stand still and be thrashed for performing it. Rather a small but a scientific diddle is this: the diddler approaches the bar of a tavern and demands a couple of twists of tobacco. These are handed to him when, having slightly examined them, he says, Don't much like this tobacco. Here, take it back and give me a glass of brandy and water in its place. The brandy and water is furnished and imbibed. The diddler makes his way to the door, but the voice of the tavern keeper arrests him. I believe, sir, you have forgotten to pay for your brandy and water. Pay for my brandy and water? Didn't I give you the tobacco for the brandy and water? What more would you have? But, sir, if you please, I don't remember you paying me for the tobacco. What do you mean by that, you scoundrel? Didn't I give you back your tobacco? Isn't that your tobacco lying there? You expect me to pay for what I did not take? But, sir, the publican, now rather at a loss what to say, but, sir, but me no buts, sir, interrupts the diddler, apparently in a very high dudgeon, and slamming the door after him, as he makes his escape. But me no buts, sir, and none of your tricks upon the travellers. Here again is a very clever diddle, of which the simplicity is not of which the simplicity is not its least recommendation. A purse or pocketbook being really lost, the loser inserts in one of the daily papers of a large city a fully descriptive advertisement. Whereupon our diddler copies the facts of this advertisement with a change of heading of general phraseology and address. The original, for instance, is long and verbose, is headed "A Pocket-Book Lost." It requires the treasure when found to be left at number 1 Tom Street. The copy is brief, being headed with "Lost" only, indicates number 2 Dick or number 3 Harry Street as a locality at which the owner may be seen. Moreover, it is inserted in at least 5 or 6 of the daily papers of the day, which, while in point of time, it makes its appearance only a few hours after the original. Should it be read by the loser of the purse, he would hardly suspect it to have any reference to his own misfortune. But, of course, the chances are 5 or 6 to 1 that the finder will repair to the address given to the diddler rather than the pointed out by the rightful proprietor. The former pays the reward, pockets the treasure, and decamps. Quite the analogous diddle is this. The Lady of Ton has dropped, somewhere in the street, a diamond ring of very unusual value. For its recovery, she offers some $40 or $50 reward, giving in her advertisement a very minute description of the gem and of its setting, and declaring that on its restoration at number so-and-so in such avenue, the reward be paid instanter, without a single question being asked. During the lady's absence from home, a day or two afterwards, a ring is heard at the door of number so-and-so and in such avenue. Servant appears. The lady of the house is asked for and is declared to be out, which is astounding information. The visitor expresses the most poignant regret. His business of its importance and concerns the lady herself. In fact, he had the good fortune to find her diamond ring, but perhaps it would be as well as he would call again. By no means, says the servant, and by no means, says the lady's sister and the lady's sister-in-law, who are summoned forthwith. The ring is clamorously identified, the reward is paid, and the finder nearly thrusts out of doors. The lady returns and expresses some little dissatisfaction with her sister and sister-in-law because they happen to have paid $40 or $50 for a facsimile of her diamond ring, a facsimile made out of real pinchbeck and unquestionable paste. But as there really is no end to diddling, so there would be none to this essay, were I even to hint at half the variation or inflections of which this science is susceptible. I must bring this paper perforce to a conclusion, and this I cannot do better than a summary notice of a very decent but rather elaborate diddle, of which our own city was made the theatre not very long ago, and which was subsequently repeated with success in other still more verdant localities of the Union. A middle-aged gentleman arrives in town from parts unknown. He is remarkably precise, cautious, staid, and deliberate in his demeanor. His dress is scrupulously neat, but plain, unostentatious. He wears a white cravat, an ample waistcoat, made with an eye to comfort alone, thick-soled, cozy-looking shoes, and pantaloons without straps. The whole air, in fact, of your well-to-do, sober-sided, exact, and respectable man of business, par excellence. One of the stern and outwardly hard, internally soft sort of people that we see in the crack high comedy. Fellows whose words are so many bonds, and who are noted for giving away guineas in charity with the one hand, while in the way of mere bargain they exact the uttermost fraction of farthing with the other. Let me get better. It's 1.5 pages to go. I think my voice is failing me again. He makes much ado before he can get suited with a boarding house. He dislikes children. He has been accustomed to quiet. His habits are methodical, and then he would prefer getting into a private and respectable small family, piously inclined. Terms, however, are no object. Only he must insist upon settling his bill on the first of every month. It's now the second. He begs his landlady, when he finally obtains one to his mind, not on any account to forget his instructions upon this point, but to send in a bill and receipt precisely at 10 o'clock on the first day of every month, and under no circumstances to put it off to the second. These arrangements made, our man of business rents an office in a reputable rather than a fashionable quarter of the town. There is nothing he more despises than pretense. Where there is much show, he says, there is seldom anything very solid behind. Observation which so profoundly impresses his landlady's fancy. She makes a pencil memorandum of its forthwith in her great family Bible, on the broad margin of the Proverbs of Solomon. The next step is to advertise, after some such fashion as this, in the principal business 6 pennies of the city. The pennies are eschewed as not respectable, and as demanding payment for all advertisement in advance. A man of business holds it as a point of his faith that work should never be paid for until done. Wanted. The advertisers, being about to commence extensive business operations in the city, will require the service of 3 or 4 intelligent and competent clerks, to whom a liberal salary will be paid. The very best recommendations, not so much for capacity as for integrity, will be expected. Indeed, as the duties to be performed involve high responsibilities and large amounts of money must be necessarily passed through the hands of those engaged, it is deemed advisable to demand a deposit of $50 from each clerk employed. No person need apply, therefore, who is not prepared to leave this sum in the possession of the advertiser, and who cannot furnish the most satisfactory testimonials of morality. Young gentlemen piously inclined will be preferred. Application should be made between the hours of 10 and 11 a.m. and 4 and 5 p.m. of Mers. Bogs, Hogs, Logs, Frogs, and Company, number 110 Dog Street. By the 31st day of the month, this advertisement has been brought to the office of Mers. Bogs, Hogs, Logs, Frogs, and Company. Some 15 or 20 young gentlemen piously inclined. But our man of business is in no hurry to conclude a contract with any. No man of business is ever precipitate. Goodness, how many tongue twisters. It is not until the most rigid catechism is respect to the piety of each young gentleman's inclination that his services are engaged and his $50 receipted for, just by way of proper precaution, on the part of the respectable firms of Bogs, Hogs, Logs, Frogs, and Company. On the morning of the first day of the month, the landlady does not present her bill according to promise. A piece of neglect, which the comfortable head of the house, ending in Oggs, would no doubt have chided her severely, but he had been prevailed upon to remain in town a day or two for this. As it is, the constables have had a sad time of it, running hither and thither, and all they can do is declare the man of business most emphatically a hen knee high, by which some persons imagine they imply that he is NEI, by which again the very classical phrase non est inventus is supposed to be understood. In the meantime, the young gentlemen, one and all, are somewhat less piously inclined than before, while the landlady purchases a shilling's worth of the Indian rubber, and very carefully obliterates the pencil memorandum that some fool has made in her great family Bible, on the broad margins of the Proverbs of Solomon. So we're just read a whole bunch of stories of people being swindled or diddled, as the author puts it. A fun story. I do appreciate Og's definite hustle. Indeed it was. It was. I do like the ones where it's like, oh, here's the money in advance. Or, oh yeah, I be sure to go to so and so. Apps. Thank you. My goodness. I think made me think of Music Man. Music Man, interesting. Very interesting. My goodness, I feel like I'm gonna have my voice lost tomorrow. Good thing I have an off day. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. Last reading all the Edgar Allan Poe. Always a joy to dip into literature. I don't know when I'll do my next day because I took today as a way to gauge the extent of which I can go. And I think they'd have to run a bit shorter than my usual stream, which is like just an hour or two. But yeah. Let me see if anyone's streaming right now. Right. Oh, we see Mr. Blay, who was here a bit earlier. He is. We will drop us off. Ooh, do you want your volume? Because I don't know what kind of game he's playing. We'll drop him off. Alright. And thank you guys so much for today's stream. It was a blast. So, just get the raid queued up. Just be careful about the volume, or to lower it back down if you guys need to before I send you. I will be back Monday. We will most likely be doing an early Pokemon stream again. Or we'll just talk as I shiny hunt the Rookidee. But thank you guys so much for coming. This has been Rowan Dust. Hang off. Let's give Mr. Bliss some love. Thank you.